Hello, everybody. We have a short presentation today, but I think an important presentation. We're going to be taking a look at DIY and music technology development, empowering students as creators. So I wanted to just quickly kind of reflect on my own journey. So I started as a music performance major. I got my bachelor's in jazz guitar. Um, After that, I went right into a master's in jazz performance and spent many years playing in cover bands, doing jazz gigs, and eventually got into music production. And I did that for a while, and started working with artists, and eventually sort of found my niche in writing music for commercials. So I lived in New York for a good number of years, working for a company that did music for commercials. I also did other opportunities for short films, music libraries, and that sort of thing. I knew that teaching was part of my path. I had been teaching as an adjunct at various schools, and was really passionate about that, and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do my doctorate degree in. I didn't necessarily want to just do another degree in jazz, and a degree in sort of traditional notated composition didn't feel like quite the right fit either. I was really lucky to find a great program in Arizona State University, which was the Music for Interdisciplinary Digital Media. I really wanted to explore these sort of applications of developing your own music software, working with microcomputers, doing sound installations. So this is something that's really near and dear to my heart, this topic that we're going to go over today. And I think it's really important because it might connect with a lot of your students as well. I know that robotics clubs and this type of thing are becoming more and popular in the K to 12 sphere, and programming, building skills in programming. So this goes right along with that. It's not like that has to happen over here in one box and music happens over here in this other box. Finding ways to connect those is what I want to inspire you today. Just kind of talk broadly about this, and then in the module you can dive a little bit deeper into some of the areas of discussion. So the big ideas are move beyond passive use, empower students as creators, right? If students can use a digital audio workstation, they could make their own plugins using something like Max for Live, or they could make their own MIDI controller using some of the Arduino or Playtronica or Raspberry Pi. Music technology is a playground for creativity, problem solving, and innovation, right? Either playing an instrument or being a producer using existing technology, those are only two paths. We want to open things up so students feel that they can explore and create their own instruments, create their own musical technology. And this DIY ethos sort of approach encourages deeper understanding and ownership. Students who create these DIY projects feel a deeper connection to music and to their creations. Why DIY in music technology? It encourages interdisciplinary learning, music, coding, electronics, looking at combining those different fields, both in the sort of the physical realm of electronics and soldering and putting together different components, connecting wires, coding, understanding computer coding. I have to say that in my life, music and coding, although I have much more experience in music, they're very closely related. It's this problem solving ethos that you can get totally immersed in it, and you can really sort of just to focus on your experience, and it really gets you into this problem solving mode, which is really kind of beautiful. It also builds transferable skills, right? Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and hands-on learning fosters real-world connections. So you students are thinking about what they're seeing and evolving in technology and navigating it not being something that's happening out there, but something that they are engaged in. So the foundations of DIY music technology, right? This is not something that's new. This is not just of the digital era. This goes back to the tradition of folks like the inventor of the theremin or Robert Moog, this user-led innovation, right? People coming up with questions and then saying, how can I solve that question myself, right? This evolves into our sort of modern landscape of open source tools and community-driven development. Let's take a look at some of the key tools and platforms. The graphic here is something that we don't dive into deep into this presentation, but a cool tool I discovered a number of years ago called the Playtron by Playtronica. This allows you to turn basically anything that can conduct electricity. It could be water, could be vegetables, could be plants, could be your friend, and allows you to turn that into a MIDI controller. So you can sync these to different drum hits or different notes So it's a really fun way, even with young students, that this could be a cool way of exploring music technology. It's very hands-on, very fun. So just wanted to have this as sort of our opening image for this discussion here. So a really cool set of tools that have been around with us for quite some time. I believe in the 1980s is when the software was really first introduced, back at the sort of the dawn of that MIDI era, is Maximus P. This is a visual programming for audio, MIDI, and video. So visual programming, what that means is it's a little bit different than something like Java or HTML or Python like that, where it's a text-based language. Here you're kind of working, and guitar players, you'll like this, you're working with a bunch of objects that you connect with patch cables, right? So you have your metronome object, and you connect your metronome object to a random object. And the random object you connect to a MIDI note object, and the MIDI note object you connect to a synthesizer. So now you have a synthesizer that's playing random notes, right? So it's a visual graphic, based programming. You can create custom synthesizers, sequencer, interactive installations. Really, it's kind of cool in that a lot of music software, like, a DAW, we open it up and it's kind of set like what we can do with it. Obviously, the music that we can create with it is hugely varied, but it's sort of it has a way that it kind of wants you to work with it, right? Whereas this, you open this up, it's a blank slate. You can kind of take it in any direction that you want. Maybe that's something that's more sequence oriented, or something that's more improvisatory, or something that's working with video or processing live input from a microphone. You can really kind of go any direction with it. It teaches logic, signal flow, and creative problem solving. The links you'll find in the supplementary materials on D2L. Another one of their projects, more recent, by the same company, Cycling 74, is Rainbow. So Rainbow allows you to export max patches to hardware or software formats. So you can export things to, let's say you wanted to make your own guitar pedal. You can do that here. You could program your own digital delay with some special features, and you could put it into a Raspberry Pi, get some 1/4-inch outputs hooked up to that, and now you've made your own effects pedal. You could create VSTs that could be open in any DAW. You can even make things that are hosted on the web. So this is great if you wanted to make your own sort of music education tool that could live on the web and is accessible to everyone with no software download required. So it's a really cool set of tools. We had one of our students in our studio composition engage with Rainbow, both for a Surrey project that was over the summer and for his final project, created some documentation for this new software. So it's something that's relatively new. It's very open, but I think it's great because Max is something that people love, and this allows you to sort of expand it outside of that environment. There's also Max for Live. Ableton Live has been around probably 15 years now at least. It's become one of the most popular DAWs, particularly with producers in the electronic and hip-hop world. It's talked a lot about in your textbook. Ethan Hine is a big fan of Ableton Live, and they talk in the textbook about why it's a great choice. But Max for Live, what it allows you to do is take what you're working on in Max and sort of package it together in something that can be opened within Ableton Live. So Ableton Live is a sort of porous environment where either individuals or people who are creating these projects and posting them online, selling them for very affordable prices, usually $5 to $10, $15, $20 for really cool quality effects that in other DAWs you'd spend hundreds of dollars on. It sort of creates this porous environment, which I personally like. I was working on a dance piece this latest semester that'll be premiering this month in June. And Max for Live devices were such a huge part of my process because it allowed me to process sounds in really cool and creative ways. So I think there's a great community around Max for Live. Definitely something worth checking out if you're in Ableton already, or if you're looking for sort of a DAW to become your sort of main DAW. Maybe this tips the scale in that direction. I also want to talk about this sort of new phenomenon, maybe the last 10 years, called live coding. Right? There's different text-based musical environments, or sort of text/object-based musical environments that allow you to code it in a live sense, that you could sort of start a piece of music And as you're going, add different elements, and the code will sort of usually be projected behind you, maybe with some cool graphics and that sort of stuff. This has happened at South by Southwest and other festivals. There's these two sort of tools, Sonic Pi and Tidal Cycles, that are pretty popular in this area, and encourages improvisation and computational creativity. There's some really cool community events called Algo Raves. So maybe if you have students that are really into computers, this could be a way to sort of bridge the gap between computation and music making and give a different sort of framework to music making and thinking about making music, right? We've talked about coming to music as an instrumentalist or a vocalist or now a producer, but coming as a programmer, why not? This is a new way of engaging with music. And I just wanted to point this out to get you to think about all the possibilities of music technology. Next up, I want to take a look at the Raspberry Pi. So the Raspberry Pi is a microcomputer, and you can write code for it in a variety of different languages, in Java, in Python. There's sort of some libraries of code that are sort of suited for music. I used one in my dissertation called Happy Brackets. It's based in Java, and it has a bunch of sort of musical, pre-built musical applications like oscillators and metronomes and samplers and granular samplers. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with it. So the great thing about Raspberry Pis is they have a lot of your standard connections that you might need, like USB. They have an 1/8" port, so you can hook up things like speakers right to them. They're a really great and pretty affordable microcomputer considering the amount of power they have. They're Wi-Fi enabled, so you can connect devices wirelessly. They're super powerful, super portable, really cool devices. You could build synths, you could build effects pedals. Great for any kind of cross-curricular learning. And I'll have some examples to both my dissertation project where you see one of the computers I use in the sound installation, and also to more general Raspberry Pi information. Related to the Raspberry Pi, but its own sort of separate world, is the Bella board. So this is a low latency audio platform, real-time DSP that works on the BeagleBone microcomputer. It's great for interactive installations, custom instruments. It's really cool because they've sort of built in native multi-channel audio. You can get like a breakout card that you can connect one single microcomputer to either 8 microphones or 8 speakers. So it's pretty cool in its small size that it can be doing lots of cool multi-track audio. I have a link to the website, and I have an example of how I used one in a project that sort of combined live music performance, some incoming audio input, and some sounds of the animals of the Sonoran Desert. Thinking about, who are the groups of people involved in this area, there's a really cool and important conference that's called NIME. That's New Interfaces for Musical Expression. It happens every year around the world. It's where music technologists and enthusiasts come to present things they've created, either enhancing an existing instrument or building an entirely new instrument that use technology. So it's an excellent venue for networking and inspiration. In the supplementary materials, you can find nime.org. You can see some of the things that go on in the conference. It's some really cool things going on, definitely inspirational, and a wide range of things from very experimental to some things that are more incremental improvements of, additions to existing instruments. Here's some additional platforms and ideas that you could take a look at. In addition to Raspberry Pi or the Bella board, there's Arduino. These are microcontrollers. These are great for things like weather sensors or light sensors. Really cool for interaction. Very lightweight from a programming perspective, but really powerful results. Touch Designer. This is a really cool program for live visuals. So if you want to create live visuals that respond to musical input, there's a free option. There's sort of more paid options as well with Touch Designer. There's community resources like GitHub, Instructables, Hackaday. So those can be sort of places where you can kind of get deeper into these type of projects. So So I realize that some of this might feel a little bit overwhelming and say, well, I'm newer to technology and this seems like going into the deep end of the pool. And what I'd say is that your approach to this sort of area might be to, find a collaborator. Don't go it alone. Find, it could be a science or computer teacher at your school. If there's already a robotics club or something like that, it could be partnering with them. Mentorship, find ways to support students whose interests intersect with music and computational creativity. Again, with a lot of the ethos of the textbook is that you don't have to be this expert who's been doing this for 10 years, right? You just have to be a few steps ahead of your students. And you can lead and sort of lead with a sense of humility and that you're collaborating and learning together. So I'd say keep things open, right? Find ways to make this happen, right? You can invite guest speakers, specialize in music technology, research, and creativity. Go to these conferences. It's a great way to meet folks and also just see what's going on. And let students take the lead, follow their interests. They might be better at the tech than you, and that's okay. I've definitely had worked with students on projects where they're working in a computer programming language or something like Touch Designer, where I'm not personally experienced in that area, but I am experienced in other sort of technologies. So it's okay that if a student is really interested, in a project, you can encourage them and be there to provide musical support or, talk about, well, wouldn't it be interesting if you did this, the big level ideas where the student might be taking the lead in the sort of the nitty gritty of the coding and that sort of stuff. So I think it requires some shifts in perspective, but it's definitely worth exploring. Educational impact. So student empowerment, right? From consumers to inventors. The more ways that you can have your students feel like they are making an impact and that their work is meaningful, the better, right? So this is maybe this is not for every single student in your classroom, but there might be those few students that this introducing these subjects could make a big difference for them in their education. It builds confidence and agency, and it's interdisciplinary learning, right? It gets to merge music with computer science, engineering, and art. So in your sort of next assignment, you'll be thinking about, collaborations and this sort of broad umbrella of STEAM. Here's some ideas here if you want to pause and kind of read through that and check out these sort of ideas that might be good starting points. So moving on, think about these things, right? What interests you about D and Y music tech? What stood out to you in this presentation as something that was interesting? This will help you with your assignment. Maybe you want to sort of talk more deeply about one of these areas. What additional resources do you feel that you need to integrate these lessons around these topics in your classroom? So think about, okay, if I wanted to really make this happen, what would I need, right? What would I need in terms of support from other people? What would I need in terms of technology? So these questions are designed to kind of get you start to think about your next assignment. Yeah, in closing thought, the best way to predict the future of music technology is to invent it, right? This is adapted from computer scientist Alan Kay, right? So this is really the ethos that I want to, impart to you and hope to impart to your students, right? That the field is open, that they are not just consumers of technology, but they can be producers of technology. And I think that's really empowering. So thank you for listening to this lecture. I hope it gives you a good foundation. Like I mentioned, definitely do a little bit deeper dive before you go into your next assignment. Explore some of the links below that go into more of an overview and more of the sort of details of each of the technologies we discussed. Thanks.